Hello and welcome to the FatBoss Guide to the Paragons of the Klaxxi 10-man normal in the Siege of Orgrimmar.
Hello!
And this encounter is going to be a long one, guys.
It's going to be a very long guide because normally we'd be like, oh okay, it's just one boss, this is what happens, and here's a couple ads here and there. No, this is 9 bosses you need to know everything about. If you don't know what each one of the bosses do, there's a high chance that you're going to fuck it up and wipe your raid. And you are going to encounter all of these bosses every single week.
It's going to be a long one, guys.
Get the popcorn, we're going to be here for a while.
Now to start off, you want to bring 2 tanks, 3 healers and a mixed DPS makeup to this encounter.
Now the fight consists of 9 bosses, as we said, each of which have different abilities. Now at any point throughout the fight, you will only be fighting any 3 of them at any one time. Now once one of the bosses die, it is replaced by another boss, and the 2 remaining bosses will be healed to full HP and also gain a 10% damage increase until they die. And that stacks up as well. That's why you don't really necessarily want to bring multi-dotters, because it isn't about cleaving down all the bosses, because of course once one of them does die, they just get all their health back. So you do need to kill them one by one. Multi-dotters necessarily aren't a horrible thing, but they're just not really used that much in this fight.
Now also, when a boss does die, it will also drop a buff that can be picked up and used by one player. This buff gives you an ability that will help you in the counter in one way or another, and these buffs are role specific, so some buffs can only be picked up by like healers or DPS or tanks or whatever.
Now the orders of the bosses you'll encounter actually changes every week, but it will remain the same throughout that raid week. So it's very similar to the way that Stone Guards work. There's always going to be a different setup, but it stays the same throughout the week. Meaning that in order for you guys to actually understand the boss, we can't just say, oh, you kill this because this guy's up. Well, next week that guy might not be up. So you do actually need to understand how each one of the bosses work in order to defeat the encounter consistently, because otherwise you're just gonna... you won't be able to know how to kill them in any order, which you do need to know.
So we're going to go through each boss individually, what they do, and how to deal with their individual mechanics, as well as the priority in comparison to the other bosses.
Yeah, so you need to know, like, when this guy comes down, do I need to kill him or do I need to kill him? Which one do you need to choose? Because, like, you do need to know which ones are more important, which one's mainly more annoying more than anything else. Now to start off, we're going to talk about Kilruck, the Wind Reaver. Now he has a debuff that he places on the tank called Exposed Veins. Now this will increase all damage taken by another boss called Zeril the Poisoned Mind. So if you do have this debuff, when that other boss does appear, or if he hasn't, like as long as he hasn't already appeared, just make sure that you don't tank that one. That's why you want to bring 2 tanks, because there are a lot of these types of debuffs that make it so one mob makes it so you take more damage from another mob. So just make sure you have one tank this mob, and you don't tank switch on this mob.
The Wind Reaver will also cast Gouge. This will incapacitate his current target, which will be hopefully the tanks, and then he'll immediately cast Mutilate. Mutilate is like an extra hard attack that deals really high damage, so you need to make sure that when this does come in, try and have a cooldown up, and also you want to try and pre-cast it as a healer if you can.
Now the main move that this Wind Reaver does is Death from Above. Now what he'll do, he'll fly up in the air and land on a random player, dealing a bunch of damage. Now there is a visual indicator, so you can easily move from it. You have to be quite fast, but just try not to be stacked up for this ability, because like if there's a lot of you, there's a more chance that you're going to be hit by it. But it doesn't hit necessarily a stupid amount, doesn't really hit that hard, but it is generally quite annoying.
Yeah, you have plenty of time to remove from it, it's not really a big deal. Now when Wind Reaver dies, the buff that you can collect off his corpse is called Reeve. This is only for the DPS. This will give you an extra action button that when used will launch you forward like a fixed distance and deal damage within 10 yards of your impact area.
So it's kind of like a giant heroic leap, except you can't control, it's literally just going to go directly in front of your character.
Now this will also break shields that are on ads around the outside, and we'll talk about those ads in a minute.
Yeah. Now this boss necessarily isn't like a huge DP priority, to be honest. He has got a quite annoying ability with Gouge.
None of his mechanics are particularly that devastating and can be dealt with in pretty much all situations.
Yeah.
The only other time that he is problematic is when Zeril the Poisoned Mind is active. If he isn't active, you don't really need to kill this guy. Not a big deal. He's pretty low on the priority list to kill. So we're now going to move on and talk about Zeril the Poisoned Mind. Now he has an ability called Tenderizing Strikes. This is a tank debuff that increases the amount of damage that you take from Kilruck, the Wind Reaver.
The guy before, so these guys are paired. A lot of them have these sort of paired tanked debuffs that makes it so you take more damage from the other one. This is also a 10% one, so just once again, make sure only one tank tanks this boss, and so he doesn't tank when Kilruck is up. He also has an ability called Caustic Blood. Now this makes it so each melee hit will put a 50k dot on the tank that stacks. Now if it reaches 10 stacks, it will make you explode, dealing 600k damage to the raid. Now, the interesting thing about this buff is that it will not apply if you have active mitigation up. So any of your active mitigation, like blood shields or anything like that. So what you need to do is that when he is starting to stack up on you, you do need to make sure that the stack does drop through chaining your active mitigation, or if that isn't enough, then you can quickly tank swap so your stack doesn't go to 10. Because if it goes to 10, that's pretty much a wipe. That is a huge amount of damage, and it isn't physical or anything. So either you need to have like quite a big raid cooldown ready for it, or you're probably going to die.
Now this guy also has an ability called Toxic Injection. This will give all the players in the raid one of 3 debuffs, and the debuff you get appears to be completely random. Now out of the 3 debuffs you can get a red, a yellow or a blue, and which one you get seems to be completely random. However, on the raid there'll be 5 red, 3 yellow and 2 blue.
Now these debuffs do absolutely nothing except for when the boss does something called choose catalyst. Now he'll pretty much decide on what colour debuff he will exploit. Now if you cast it on the red debuff, this will make it so everyone who has this red debuff will deal a 400k AoE around them within 10 yards. So what you got to do, make sure you are near nobody else and use a small personal cooldown, because this also hits yourself as well, and that's quite a lot of damage going out on a lot of people, and literally if you're stacked up that's going to do 800k, so make sure you're nowhere near each other.
Now when he decides to choose yellow catalyst, it will place a small yellow pool on the floor that lasts for 30 seconds that deals high ticking damage to anyone that has the yellow toxin. So if you do have the yellow toxin, when he does decide to do this, you need to make sure that you run out the group so you can place these pools out of melee range. If you are a tank and this happens to you, there's not much you can do. Just try and overlay the pools as much as you possibly can.
Now with the blue debuff, basically this will explode and deal 800k damage within 10 yards. Now you think, well, that's just going to one hit me. However, this damage can be split between 2 people, and only 2 people in 10 man. So what you need to do when this explodes, you need to have one other person with you, so you both take 400k damage, and of course both of you use a small cooldown or anything like that as well. So really it's fairly quite simple how the toxic injection works. You just got to make sure you know what each one does, because otherwise most of them will one hit you, which is quite bad.
Now when this boss does die, the buff that you can gain from him by clicking on his corpse is the Apotherical Knowledge, and now this is only for healers. This will give you an extra action button that you can use when you target an ally that makes it so that target absorbs any healing you do to that target for 10 seconds, which sounds kind of bad. However, after 10 seconds it will release all that healing that you just absorbed into one big heal, which seems kind of pointless. However, if you remember back to the previous boss with the gouge mechanic, if you know that gouge is about to come in 10 seconds time, and obviously the mutilate comes in straight away afterwards, if you use this button 10 seconds before that, give this guy loads of heals, as soon as the gouge finishes and the mutilate comes in, they'll immediately be healed for a large amount.
Yeah, and the thing is, it isn't absorbs all healing that anyone does to them. It's only the healer that casts it, so they will still be able to receive heals. It's just like one 10-second long precast, pretty much. It's not really necessary in normal mode at all, but it might be worth like using for hard mode. Like it might be worth getting used to it for heroic mode.
So in terms of the priority list for killing this guy is extremely high priority, because all of his abilities are very, very frustrating in regards to the toxic injection and the choose catalyst, and also it's quite hard to get your head around it to start with. So if this guy's up, and even more so if the Wind Reaver is up, just get rid of both of them as soon as you possibly can. Ideally getting rid of the Poison Mine guy first.
Well, the next boss you encounter is Kaztik the Manipulator. Now, pretty much he just has a lot of ads around the outside that he interacts with called Hungry Kunchongs. Now, these ads will just be all up around the outside of the room whilst the boss is alive. Once the boss dies, they go away. Now, the thing is, once one of these ads die, another will take its place, and it's not a priority in order to kill them. And the thing is, most of the time, they have a shield up that makes them immune from all damage. And the shield only goes down during some abilities, as well as if you use the Reeve move on them. That's the one that you do that heroic leap. It can actually break the shield. Now, in normal mode, there's absolutely no point for this. I imagine in heroic mode, there might be some mechanic that revolves around this, but either way, you don't need to worry about like trying to kill them.
Now, the ability that interacts with this ad is called Mesmerize. This will force one player to start walking uncontrollably towards a Kunchong. As they start to walk towards the Kunchong, they'll start taking 100k ticking damage, and the ad will gain 7 energy per tick. During this time, the shield actually does drop on the ad, which allows you to start damaging and kill the ad. This sort of Mesmerize effect will only stop after the raid has done 30% of the ad's health. So it's very, very important that DPS switch as quick as they possibly can. Now, another way of breaking this effect is actually life gripping the person who's being mesmerized. We tried this, it does work, and it's also a great way to save people, because generally while these Kunchongs are up and you do have the Manipulator in the encounter, make sure you don't stand near them, because if it does mesmerize you and you're right on top of it, you're just going to insta-die.
Yeah, because if the player does actually reach the ad, you will die instantly. It noms you proper hard. And the thing is, its energy, which we were talking about, goes all the way to full. And at this point, when the energy does go to full, they'll turn into a mature Kunchong. Now, these ads, they will need to be tanked, and they will need to be faced away from the group, because they have quite a hard-hitting cleave. So pretty much you need to switch to these ads pretty soon and take them out, because some of them will just spawn because they have gained energy through Mesmerize. So there's sometimes you can't even change if there's going to be one up, but otherwise they'll be appearing when your raid dies.
But yeah, they're very, very nasty ads. They don't have a lot of health. When they do spawn, nuke them down as quick as you possibly can. Don't tank them near anyone. Now, the only thing that the Manipulator guy will be doing throughout this whole phase, apart from the Mesmerize ability, is just spamming Sonic Projection. When he does cast this, it will like throw a slow-moving Sonic Ring projectile that you need to move out of. If you don't move, it will deal around 400k physical damage to anyone caught in the path.
Yeah.
So while this guy's up, try and keep relatively spread out. Don't be stood in front of anyone or behind anyone, and avoid this ability.
Now, when this guy dies, the buff that you'll gain is Master of Puppets. Now, this is for any role that anyone can pick this up, and it'll give you an extra action button that will make it so you summon an ad. It's actually one of the Kunchongs. They'll come along and actually help you for the fight for 40 seconds. So anyone can really pick this up. Just make sure someone does pick this up, because it is a nice little extra damage for the fight and it does help you out. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter who gains it. Probably one of the healers, because there aren't many healing specific buffs that you want to gain. So probably get your healers to go and pick this up so they can use this extra action button on cooldown. Now, this guy himself isn't a huge pain in the ass, to be honest.
Yeah,
the Mesmerize is annoying.
He's not very difficult to deal with. As long as people react quickly, this guy's very easy to deal with. So generally, you should put him lower down on your kill priority list. Now, the next mob we're going to be talking about is Corvin the Prime. Now, he has an ability called Encase Amber, and if any active boss is below 50% health, he'll encase them in amber for 10 seconds. After those 10 seconds, that boss will be completely restored to full health. Now, he can't use this ability like more than every 30 seconds. However, it's like the most annoying ability in the world.
Yeah.
This amber itself does have a health bar, and you need to nuke down this health bar. You need to kill this amber within the 10 seconds. Otherwise, yeah, he is just going to be healed back to full.
Yeah, some guilds, like, it's probably best that you do save some sort of cooldown for this, but I've even seen guilds bloodlust in order to take this down, because if it does happen, it is incredibly disastrous. This is a fair enrage timer on this fight, so like having a boss heal all the way back up is pretty horrible. Now, one thing to note is if you are killing, like if you are cleaving down two bosses, when, like, so say you want to kill boss A, but you're cleaving down boss B with him. If you take boss B to 49% and he gets encased in amber, then you can just nuke A again, so you don't even need to deal with the amber mechanic. That's not completely unnecessary for normal mode, but something you might want to take into account for heroic mode.
So with the amber, when you see it, kill it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Now, moving on, he also has an ability called Shield Bash. When he does this, he'll instantly stun the tank for 6 seconds, and will immediately start using an ability called Vicious Assault. This does extremely high amount of damage. It's like a series of 6 attacks in like a frontal cone, and each strike puts a dot on the player that gets higher and higher per stack. So when you are stunned, you need to make sure that the opposite tank taunts.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be stunned while taking these attacks, because you want to be able to dodge and parry at least, or have some sort of cooldown up. And if you're stunned, obviously you can't do that. And because it is a frontal cone, when you do taunt, make sure you're not facing the raid and you're not facing the melee.
Now, the buff that you gain when this boss dies is Master of Amber. Now, this is for tanks only. Now, this is an extra action button when used on an ally. It will place them inside of an amber tomb that stops all incoming damage for 5 seconds. However, the ally can't do anything while entombed. It is pretty much an ice block that you can put on anyone.
Yeah, it's just a save ability. If you think someone's going to die, throw this on them.
Now, this guy is really quite high on your priority list, if not the highest, because of that Encase in Amber ability. That's why guilds do use Bloodlust, so they can kill him before the cooldown comes back up. So, yeah, when this guy is around, you really got to think about killing him very early on. Now, the next boss we're going to talk about is Ayakuk, the Lucid.
You've probably said that name wrong.
It's probably wrong. But this boss is actually, you need to really understand what this boss does. Maybe not so much in normal, but you might as well wrap your head around it now. Now, the boss has something called Calculate. Now, when the boss does spawn, he will give everyone a debuff. This debuff will have a shape, a number and a color associated with it.
As in the actual icon of it.
The icon of it will have a shape, a number, and a color, and it does absolutely nothing. Apart from effect one of his main abilities called Insane Calculation Fire Edge, which is like the best name for a spell I've ever seen. Now, basically, the boss will select an initial target. Afterwards, the boss will create loads of fiery chains between all players that either have the same shape, number, or color debuff as the initial target. So say he selects Loz, who has, I don't know, mantid shape with the number 3 and blue. Now, I happen to have I also have a blue debuff, which is like, I don't know, 4 and square or something. I have no idea. That means that we'll chain because we have the same color. And then there might be someone else who has a 3, and even though their color's orange or something like that, they'll still chain. So that's how that debuff works, and that's how the chains are calculated. That's how they all match up. Anyone who does have these lines on them will start taking ticking fire damage. The damage decreases the further away you are from the other guys. Also, if you're standing like in between the chains, you also get hurt by that. So don't stand there. Yeah. But the idea is that you need to work out if you are going to be affected by the chains, and then spread out around the room and make sure you don't cut through the raid. In all fairness, you do have actually got like a small time where you can see if you're going to be part of the chain. But I think you do have a higher amount of time to actually work out. So if you do see someone that has, like, I don't know, 4 blue Squirtle or something, then and you have a Squirtle icon as well, then you know you're going to be chained with them. So it is a little bit weird, but you're going to have to know this for heroic guys. So learn it now and practice. Pretty much just spread out around the room, and otherwise it's like it does no damage if you're spread out properly.
Now the other ability that the boss has is Diminish. Now this is just his most used cast. He'll just target a random player and just spam them with like a bolt. This bolt will deal 34% of their current HP, so it can't actually kill them. However, if the player that he targets is under 25% health, they'll immediately die. It's just a death mechanic. So while this guy is up, you need to make sure that everyone's got as much health as possible, because this bolt does hurt. Now, because this boss is slightly confusing and annoying and awkward, he's also got the most annoying and awkward buff when he does die. Now, the buff he gives is only for healers, so when he does die, you want one healer to click on him. This will give you an extra action button that gives you a buff that makes all your healing to be shared to anyone in the raid who shares the same race or class as the initial target.
Just fuck this boss, man. He's so annoying. Basically, if I'm healing an orc warrior, that will heal all warriors and all orcs. So if everyone wants to switch in the raid now, we can all be goblins or something. That'd be great for this, but yeah, it's a little bit annoying.
It sounds like it's amazing, but it's not. It is. There's no way of really gimmicking it because it is shared. Yeah. So if everyone in the raid, if you do have 10 goblins and you heal someone for 10k, everyone will receive 1k.
Yeah, so it's not amazing.
So it's no big deal. It's nothing crazy, but yeah, it's a little fun.
Yeah, but the priority for this boss, he is quite annoying, especially because the fire chains do a hell of a lot of damage if you're in the wrong position, so maybe having him up for maybe 2 or 3 other bosses, but you don't want to keep him around for long, because that damage increase is going to completely destroy you.
Yeah, he's slightly higher up on the priority, but he's not that important. Now, another boss is Karos the Locust. He has an ability called Flash, where he'll charge around the room to random players. Now, anyone caught in the path while he is doing this whirlwind ability will be stunned for quite a long period of time, and they'll also start taking 200k ticking physical damage. So, obviously it's negated with armor, but it still does hurt a lot. This ticking is very, very annoying. Now, when he does, charge to one or flash to one person, he does stand still for a little while and sort of, sees if he can attack anything on the spot. So if he does charge to you, if you move and react to him very, very quickly, you'll completely avoid the stun. Yeah. Everyone can avoid the stun. You just need to react to him very, very quickly. If you do get stunned, just heal that person. It's very, very annoying, but yeah, there's not much you can do about it apart from move from it very, very quickly.
Yeah, also if you're spread out, that does mean he has a longer travel time, so it is a higher chance that you'll be able to move out of it. He also does an ability called Whole Amber, but he'll periodically just leave the encounter and just go to a platform where he'll throw down 3 big amber patches, and they just tick for 150k damage per second, and they do land on players specifically, so if you can be spread out, that'll be great, because then, of course, they're not all on top of each other and you won't be taking a stupid amount of damage.
But yeah, they really do hurt when they come in, so make sure you are spread and just avoid them. Eventually they'll despawn.
Now, the buff that you gain is Strong Legs. This is for DPS only, and this is probably one of the more fun ones. Basically, it's an extra action button that when you press it, it allows you to jump up to the platform that you fucked off to and throw down one amber bomb. Now, this bomb will do 300k damage to all enemies within a 15-yard AoE, but the interesting thing, if you remember back to the guy who puts people in amber and heals them for a shit ton, this will break that instantly. So there is a possibility if you do manage to kill this guy first before that guy even joins the fight, if you go on that, then you can just keep breaking the amber. Now, however, the amber, I'm not sure if it takes a long time to respawn or if it doesn't respawn at all. If you use the extra action button and go up there, it'll just lob you straight back down, and it'll just give you a DPS loss because, of course, you've got the animations going up and down, so don't just spam it. Do use it when you think you can use it. Overall, the priority for this boss, not a huge amount. His flash is really annoying, to be honest, going around and stunning people, so you probably want to get him out fairly quickly, but the Hurl Amber ability and his actual damage to the tanks isn't ridiculous or anything like that. So
yeah, he's not a big deal. You should only ever kill him when you've already killed quite a lot of the other mobs and he's starting to get quite a high damage multiplier on him. The next boss we're going to be talking about is Skier the Bloodseeker. Now, this guy will apply a tank debuff. This will increase the damage that you take by Rikal the Dissector by 10% per stack, and he's another boss that we're going to talk about in a moment.
So yeah, it's one of the grouped up, because Rikal also has that ability where he makes it so you take more damage from this guy. So once again, if you are tanking this guy, only tank this guy and make sure when Rikal comes in, you don't go anywhere near him unless your stack has dropped. So keep that in mind. Nothing too crazy to know about. Now, his main ability that he does is Bloodletting. Now, this just does a fairly big hit to the tank and spawns two bloods that kind of move towards a Paragon. Now, when they do reach the Paragon, they will heal that Paragon. However, the size of the heal is dependent on the blood's health when they reach them. So if they are very low health, they won't be doing that much healing. However, of course, you can just kill the bloods. They can be stunned, they can be slowed, and that's what you should be doing. You should be taking out these ads because you don't want anyone to heal, ever, because the fight's long enough and you don't want any healing going out.
It's very, very important that you switch these bloods as soon as possible. One thing to note about these bloods is you can't knock them back, which is very, very frustrating. But yet, stuns and slows do work. You want to assign people to stun them, and they will spawn in 4 different locations, so you need to make sure that you also react to them very, very quickly. Now, when he does die, DPS will have the option to click on him and we'll get an extra action button that gives a buff called Bloodthirsty. This will make it so all attacks over the next 10 seconds have a chance of spawning a blood orb that if you run through will heal you for 10% of your maximum HP. It's like the monk healing mastery. It just spawns orbs. Stand the orbs, you get healed. Pretty nice. Really, you want this for melee rather than range DPS, because melee will be hitting more frequently. Yeah,
and of course they're closer to the tanks, and like with a range, you should really be spread out most of this fight, whereas melee you're all clumped up and everything, so it'll always go to someone useful, and of course you just want to use this on cooldown. Now, this guy, to be honest, he isn't like a ridiculously high priority.
The bloods become more and more annoying, so you really want to take this guy out early, unless you've got someone who's more frustrating to kill. Now, Rikal the Dissector, apart from him having the similar tank debuff, you know, where it increases the amount of damage that you take from Skier, that stacks 10% per stack, again, if you do have this debuff, don't tank Skier, and if you're on Skier and you have the opposite debuff, don't tank Rikal. Pretty simple, that's how that works. However, another ability he has is Injection. He'll hit the tank with a debuff that deals 10k damage per second, and when the debuff expires, several parasites will spawn and start fixating and attacking random players.
However, you can stop the application of this ability through active mitigation. So if you know this ability is coming in and you like can prepare for it, you can put a blood shield up and it's just like, nah, never mind. Completely, that doesn't even count, which kind of makes the rest of his abilities kind of shit. I'm surprised they allowed you to like get around this, but you can, which is awesome. Now, if you do get the parasites out, they deal 100k damage per second to whoever they're really fixated on. This is physical damage, so it is reduced by armor, but the thing is they will fully regen all their health every 10 seconds, so if you do need to kill them, you need to kill them very quick. However, he does actually help you kill them by turning one of you into a fucking scorpion, Lawrence.
This will turn a random player into a Scorpion and they'll start taking 50k damage per second. Now, when you are turned into a Scorpion, that player now has access to 4 abilities. Now, the 4 abilities you'll get is Claw, which is just like a big hit. Swipe, which is an AoE cleave that hits harder than Claw and also does increase damage if the target is infected by his next ability, which is Sting, which is a dot that you just want to place and just leave on him. And Prey. This Prey ability will instantly kill a parasite. If you are affected by the Scorpion debuff, you should instantly be trying to kill off all these parasites.
Now the thing is, we killed this boss super fast. This was the first boss that actually came down on the pool, and we wanted to just get rid of him straight away. And we didn't actually get to see anyone turn into a Scorpion, which is very much a shame. However, we did see the parasites, so you do actually get to see what they look like at least. But however, it is very simple. If you do turn into a Scorpion, just eat all the parasites and then keep attacking until the boss until the effect wears off. Now the buff that you gain from this guy called Mad Scientist, anyone can pick it up, and when you hit the extra action button, you turn into the Scorpion, Lawrence, and you do slightly higher damage as well, which is really, really awesome. Now, to note about the damage that the Scorpion does, you as a Scorpion, it's based off your attack damage or your spell power, whichever one is the highest, either the melee or ranged attack power as well. So, just to let you know, that is how it works.
Now, this guy, we felt like it was a very high priority, because his parasites do so much damage on the raid, and they're very, very frustrating to kill as well, because the way that they regen their life every 10 seconds, you can't really AoE them, unless everyone stacks up. But if you've got other bosses that do abilities that prevent you from stacking, then obviously killing these parasites is difficult. So we nuked him down first, but really he's not that high on the priority list, but he's sort of midway. He's half important.
Yes. Now the last boss, Lawrence, we're already there at the last boss. It's been like there's been no time at all. Fucking Blizzard, is Hizek the Swarm Keeper. Now this guy is a hunter, and basically all he does is multi-shot, and this just hits a bunch of players for some physical damage. He just spams this throughout the fight and you can't do anything about it, just heal it, but his main ability is aim.
This will select a random player and will knock you back to a 45-yard distance from the boss. However, you're already 45 yards away from the boss, it won't knock you back at all.
You should be that far away anyway.
Yeah, you'll be close to that anyway. This will then make a beam between you and the boss, and after the spell is over, after the cast, it will deal 1.4 million damage to all targets that are on the beam and the actual target itself. However, the damage is shared. So if no one's in there, that target will take 1.4 million, which is a pretty hefty amount. However, if there's people in there, then it's all split out. And when the damage is dealt, it will also spawn a small patch underneath you that explodes for about 100k. So you do take 2 lots of damage.
Yeah.
And this little patch that spawns underneath you that explodes, it is like splash damage. So the best way to deal with this ability is by sending 4 people into the beam and making sure that you're spread out within the beam. If you're all stood on top of each other, you're all just going to instantly die.
Yeah.
So just spread out along the beam. That's all you need to do. Relatively simple. And the best thing with this really is just make sure that you're not stood really, really far away from the raid.
Now the buff that you gain from this boss is Compound Eye. Now this is for DPS only. Now this is an extra action button that can be used on an enemy, and this will shoot out a bolt at the target that will deal more damage the further away you are, so be a ranged DPS. This will also increase the amount of damage the target takes for 15% for 10 seconds, so you just want to give this to a ranged DPS who will just use this on cooldown pretty much, just constantly spamming on the boss. Overall, this guy isn't a ridiculously high priority. However, his aim ability can put you in places where you don't want to be. And of course, every time the other bosses die, he gets 10% more damage. So you can start really, really hurting.
Yeah, the aim eventually will get to a point where it's going to start one-hitting people. So you really need to kill this guy. If you don't kill him immediately, you want to end up killing him within the next 2 bosses' kill orders, if you want to call them that. Okay, so that's all the bosses, and that's all their abilities, and that's how you deal with them. Now we're going to briefly talk about
actually how to do the fight.
Actually how to do the fight. I mean, the best way of doing this encounter, because it does change on a week-by-week basis, and you will have a different order every single week, and there's probably going to be loads of different spawn orders that you will eventually get. It's very, very difficult for us to tell you how to do it. Really, you just need to attack the fight by a boss-by-boss basis. And you can work out pretty quickly, especially if you understand all the mechanics and how to deal with them, who you need to kill. But ultimately, there's nothing we can really do to help you.
Yeah, we can't exactly say, okay, for this week, guys, we need to kill him in this order. See you next week. We could do that. A weekly report on how to kill the boss. Fuck off, we're not doing that. So either way, you just need to work out yourselves. We've told you what the bosses do and what order you kind of half want to kill them in, if they are there. So just work with that. And if there are any problems, we've always got the comment section where you can complain at us, which is wonderful.
And if you check the description of the video, we put a list of all the bosses and what we would say is their list of priority, so you can go check that out as well. But that's more or less it, guys. If this guide did help you out,
if you're still here,
then please do drop us a like, guys. It helps us out a lot. And make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe.
And if you'd like to see any of our other 10-man Siege of Orgrimmar guides here by FatBoss, then please do click up on the links now and you see on your screen, and that'll take you straight to those videos.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.